Look at blending constraints. I'm going to use a curve path constraint for this camera, and I'm also going to use a directional constraint towards my subject matter, this cube. I actually want to use the z-axis in this case. Now if I go back to the path constraint, there we go, moving it around. And before I start, I want to make sure that any keyframing I do is linear, because I'm going to do some blends. I have different options inside here. If I go inside my preferences, I can do things like inside the animation, I can do the interpolating and set it to linear. So say from 1 to frame 40, I would like, there we go, for it to do this. I would also like the blend at the same time as well. Boom. Use these keys. Oh, I did it at frame 2, doesn't matter. Go to frame 1. I would then like it to blend and constrain to another object. So if I were to constrain, say, position to this guy over here, I've lost my animation because it's now overriding the first one. They're both vying for the global position of my object. So what I'm going to do is keyframe the blend weight of this as well. So at frame 1, it's not going to be on at all. And at frame 40, again, it's still not on. So now I still have my original curve path animation. I'll just move this up here, perhaps you can see it a little easier. And then I can switch to, say, frame 50. I want it to be on, like so. So now I've got a blend from a curve path and then onto my null here. Any stage, obviously, I can still move this and all my constraints are still going to work properly, like so. Maybe I need an up vector constraint for the camera. It's in the curve path at any stage, doesn't matter. I can either create a new one. Let's do that. Create new, and let's just put this high in the sky, something like that. Give it 1,000, there we go. So just to quickly control that. I can take this a step further and look at the constraints inside here. So if I take the first one, it'll be the position constraint, and if I were to open it up, I can look at the blend weight. Actually, I'm going to take the, instead of the position constraint, I'm going to look at the path constraint first. There it is. So what we want to be able to do is, I'm going to keep this open though, I will need that in a second, is to mark these parameters. So I'm going to pin this open, select my object and mark these two here. And as with everything, whatever is marked in the bottom right hand corner, I can store the mark parameter function curves. And I'll call this path. There we go. So with the second constraint, mark that, store it, and call it position. Inside the mixer now, I can add these. There we go. And now it's going. And of course, I can stretch this out, so it takes a little bit longer to do. Let's move that up there. In addition, I can load in my position constraint. And there we go. It's blending in the last bit. It was only the last 10 frames that it started to blend. So if I go back to here, I can always select my clip and trim. Any stage I can now mix between these. So now I have, as you can see here, the position changing here. So that's mixing and blending constraints.